She walked into the towering office building with a mop and a badge, but nothing could prepare her for the moment she looked up and saw him, the CEO, the man who once promised he'd come back for her. 12 years had passed, no calls, no letters, just silence. So why now? Why this job? And why was he watching her like he still remembered everything? If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. And tell us, where in the world are you watching from right now? Now let's jump into the story. Takuya. Morning was already warm as Nora Blake stepped off the crowded bus and looked up at the towering glass building in front of her. 37 stories of steel and sunlight, the headquarters of a fast-growing tech company called Ascendia. The company was famous for its cutting-edge software, smart gadgets, and rich investors. Nora, however, wasn't here for any of that. She was here to clean. Her shoes were slightly worn, and her simple white blouse clung to her back in the heat. In her hand was a folded letter offering her the job. Janitorial staff, day shift, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. She took a deep breath and whispered, "Just get through today." Tucked in her purse was a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in foil. Lunch from home because the building's cafe was too expensive. Inside the lobby, the air was cool and smelled faintly of lemon and coffee. Polished floors reflected the tall plants and glass walls. Everything felt too perfect, too modern. Nora approached the security desk and offered a shy smile. "I'm here for my first day," she said softly. "Custodial services." The security guard didn't smile back. He simply handed her a plastic visitor badge and pointed toward the elevators. "Second floor, maintenance office." As she walked across the glossy floor, Nora caught glimpses of people in sleek clothes with coffee, cups, and smartphones. No one looked at her. It was both a relief and a reminder. She didn't belong here. Not really. The elevator opened with a quiet chime, and Nora stepped into a world that felt more familiar. The second floor was quiet and smelled of cleaning supplies. A short woman with curly hair and a clipboard looked up as she entered. "You must be Nora," the woman said, eyeing her quickly. "I'm Donna. I run the maintenance staff. Come on, let's get you started." Donna walked her through a small supply room and handed her a folded gray uniform. "Bathroom's there," she said, pointing. "You'll be working the top floors, 35 through 37, the executive suites. Keep the place spotless and you'll be fine." Nora changed into the uniform and studied herself in the mirror. She barely recognized the person staring back. The girl who once dreamed of being a nurse now wore rubber gloves and carried trash bags. "It's honest work," she reminded herself, adjusting the collar. Minutes later, she pushed her cleaning cart into the executive elevator. The soft jazz music playing felt out of place next to the rattling wheels of her cart. She stared at her reflection in the metal doors. Tired eyes, dark hair tied back, a face both hopeful and resigned. The elevator doors opened on the 37th floor. It was silent, spotless, and filled with glass offices and expensive art. Nora began her tasks quietly, emptying trash, wiping surfaces, and avoiding eye contact when someone passed by. No one said a word to her. They barely seemed to notice her at all. Around 11:30, she was cleaning a glass wall in a corner meeting room when she heard voices approaching. The conversation was light at first, something about profits and shareholders. She didn't pay attention until she heard the second voice. It wasn't just the sound. It was the rhythm, the way the speaker paused between thoughts. It tugged at her memory. She turned her head slightly, just enough to see two men in suits walking down the hall. One was older, heavyset, with graying hair. The other was tall, with dark brown hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes she couldn't see from this angle. Still, something about him made her heart skip a beat. "Can't be," she whispered. The man turned slightly as he laughed at something the older one said. Nora's breath caught in her throat. It was him. Miles Carter, her childhood friend. The boy who used to race bikes with her down the old park trail. The boy who sat with her under a tree and said, "I'll come back for you, I promise." But he had never come back. And now, here he was, wearing a $1,000 suit and walking through the halls of a company that bore his name on every brochure. Nora turned away quickly, her hand trembling as she sprayed cleaner on the already spotless glass. Her chest felt tight, not just from surprise, but from a mixture of feelings she didn't know how to name. Confusion, sadness, maybe even anger. She finished the meeting room and moved down the hallway, trying to calm herself. It couldn't be real. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe she was imagining things. People changed. But then, just after lunch, as she was refilling a soap dispenser in the executive restroom, Donna appeared in the doorway. "Nora," she said, her voice uncertain. "The CEO wants to see you in his office." Nora froze. "Me?" "Yeah, he asked for you by name." A cold wave passed through her. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. Donna shrugged. "No idea, but when the big boss calls, you go. It's the big corner office, end of the hall." Nora nodded slowly. Her feet felt heavy as she pushed her cart back to the elevator. Her heart pounded louder with each step. Was this it? Was she being fired on her first day? When she reached the office door, it was open. She knocked gently on the frame and looked down at the thick carpet. "Come in," said a familiar voice. Nora stepped into the room, still not looking up. She didn't want to see his face. Not yet. "Please, have a seat," he said. "I'd rather stand," she replied softly. "I don't want to dirty your chair." There was a pause. Then he said, "Please, I insist." And this time, his voice wasn't that of a CEO. It was the voice of someone who remembered. Nora slowly sat down, her hands folded in her lap. And for the first time in years, she looked up into the eyes of the boy who once promised he would never forget her. Nora sat stiffly on the edge of the chair, her eyes flicking around the large office. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the space in sunlight. A sleek wooden desk stretched before her, covered with neatly stacked folders, a laptop, and a small framed photo turned slightly away. Across from her, behind the desk, sat Miles Carter. He looked older, of course, taller. His jaw was more defined, and his hair was styled with care. But the eyes were the same, warm, hazel, thoughtful. He smiled gently, but not in a way that felt fake or forced. "Thank you for coming," he said, folding his hands together on the desk. Nora nodded once. "Is something wrong?" Miles shook his head. "No, not at all. I was reviewing some staff files and noticed you were assigned to the day shift." He paused. "We've had a recent need for someone on the night shift. Same duties, but it's quieter. Less foot traffic. It also pays $1 more per hour." Nora blinked. "Oh." He tilted his head slightly. "Would that interest you?" She hesitated. It would help, she thought. Every dollar counted. Her grandmother's medication costs had gone up again, and last week they had to skip the heating bill. "Yes," she said quietly. "It would." Miles gave a small nod. "You'd start tonight. 11 p.m. report to the lobby at 10:45. You'll be issued a new badge." Nora stood slowly, unsure of what else to say. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." As she turned to leave, he spoke again. "One more thing, Miss Blake." She paused at the door but didn't look back. "I hope you find this company to be more than just a job. We value potential here." His words hung in the air, heavy with something unspoken. Nora gave a quick nod and stepped out, her heart racing. That evening, as she sat at home helping her grandmother with her nightly medication, her mind kept drifting back to Miles. Had he really not recognized her? Maybe he did. But if so, why hadn't he said anything? Was he pretending not to know her? Her grandmother noticed her silence. "Rough first day?" she asked. "Just different," Nora replied. "I'm switching to the night shift. It pays a little more." "That's something, isn't it?" her grandmother said softly. "More is more." Nora smiled and nodded. But inside, her thoughts wouldn't settle. That night, Nora arrived early. The night guard gave her a new badge and directed her to the service elevator. Most of the lights in the building were dim, and the air was still. She rolled her cart across the silent halls of the 37th floor, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the quiet. At 2 a.m., she entered the executive lounge to wipe down the counters and empty the trash. What she saw made her stop. On the break room table sat a small wicker basket. Inside were packets of peanut butter crackers. Next to them, 2 cherry sodas. Nora's breath caught in her throat. They were her favorites. She used to bring the same snacks to the park when she and Miles studied under the oak tree behind his old house. He always teased her about eating the same thing every time, but he'd bring extra crackers just for her. She touched one of the soda bottles gently. Probably just coincidence, she whispered to herself, but something in her chest told her it wasn't. An hour later, while cleaning his office again, she noticed a photo peeking out from behind a stack of reports on his desk. Something about it caught her eye. She moved the folders gently to the side. There it was. A photograph of 2 teenagers sitting on porch steps. The girl had long, loose hair and a wide smile. The boy beside her looked at her like she was the most important person in the world. Nora blinked back sudden tears. It was her and Miles years ago, captured in a moment she thought had been forgotten. She carefully set the picture back in place. Then something else caught her attention. Beneath the keyboard, just barely visible, was a folded slip of paper. Written across the front in familiar handwriting was one word: Nora. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She knew she shouldn't read it. She was an employee now. But her fingers moved before her thoughts could stop them. She unfolded the paper. I never forgot you. I came back for you. That was all. But it was enough to break something open inside her. She folded the note again and slipped it into her pocket. She needed answers. She needed to know why he had stayed silent, why he hadn't come back sooner. And, most of all, what he wanted from her now. That night, as dawn crept into the sky, Nora clocked out and left the building with her heart full of noise. Miles remembered her. He knew. But what did that mean? And what came next? Nora stood at the rooftop door, her hand resting on the handle. It was almost 3 a.m. The note Miles had left her was still in her pocket, folded neatly, though her fingers had traced its words again and again since she found it. Meet me on the roof at 3 a.m. if you want to talk. She wasn't sure what she was expecting. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But something inside her, something soft and stubborn, needed to hear what he had to say. The rooftop garden was quiet and peaceful, with twinkling lights strung between the trellises and soft music playing from a small speaker hidden among the plants. It was a song she hadn't heard in years, something they used to listen to while lying in the grass staring up at the stars. Miles stood near the edge, his back to her, looking out over the sleeping city. He didn't turn when she stepped outside. Instead, he said softly, I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't, Nora replied. He turned then. The look in his eyes was serious but gentle, like he was searching her face for something he'd lost and hoped to find again. Thank you for coming anyway, he said. Nora crossed her arms, trying to keep her emotions from showing. Why didn't you say something the moment you saw me? Miles took a slow step forward. Because when I looked at you, you looked afraid. Not of me, just of being seen, like you were wearing armor. And I didn't want to break it without permission. Nora didn't reply at first. Her throat was tight. Finally, she said, You left without a word. You promised you'd come back, and you never did. I know, Miles said. And I did try. You have to believe that. We moved overseas so quickly after my dad's promotion. I wrote to you dozens of letters, but they never reached you. Nora frowned. I never got any letters. Miles nodded. I know. I found out years later that my mother never mailed them. She thought it was just young love. She didn't want me holding on to something she believed I'd outgrow. Nora stared at him. The story changed everything. All this time she had believed he had forgotten. But he hadn't. I searched for you when I came back, Miles continued. But the house was gone. New people lived there. No one knew where you'd gone. My grandmother got sick, Nora said softly. We moved closer to the hospital. You were supposed to go to nursing school, Miles said. You always talked about it. Nora nodded. I was accepted, even got a scholarship. But life had other plans. Miles looked at her with something close to awe. You gave it all up to care for her, didn't you? I made a choice, she said. It wasn't easy, but it was right. Miles took another step closer. I never stopped thinking about you. When I built this company, when things finally settled, I kept hoping I'd run into you one day. I didn't expect it to be like this. Not here. Not now. Nora looked away. So what do you want from me, Miles? Just to say sorry? Or something else? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folder. I want to offer you something better than night shifts and cleaning supplies. It's not charity. It's a real job. There's a position opening in our outreach team. It's about connecting with schools and communities, helping kids find paths to careers in tech and science. You'd be amazing at it. Nora stared at the folder in his hand but didn't take it. Why me? She asked. Because we knew each other once? No, Miles said. Because I believe in who you are. Because you're smart, kind, and you understand what it's like to struggle. The kids we help, they need someone who's lived it, not just read about it. Nora shook her head. I don't want your pity. It's not pity, he said firmly. It's respect. For a moment, they stood there, surrounded by quiet, wind and fading stars. Nora spoke first. My grandmother fell yesterday. Had to go to the hospital. Miles looked concerned. Is she okay? She's home now. But the bills keep growing. I can't keep up. He didn't say anything. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket again and handed her a small wrapped item. What's this? She asked. Just something from the past, he replied. You'll know what it is. Nora unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a thin book, The Little Traveler, her favorite from childhood. A worn bookmark stuck out from a page halfway through. She opened it and found a line highlighted in pen. The things we lose have a way of coming back to us if we're meant to find them. Tucked beside the quote was another small note. Handwritten. You never left my thoughts. I meant every word, under the stars. Miles, Nora blinked back tears. Maybe some promises weren't forgotten. Maybe they were just delayed. The morning light filtered gently through the window as Nora stood in front of her closet, staring at her clothes. She didn't have many options, but today felt different. It was her first day in a new role, one she never expected. Her fingers hovered over a light blue blouse and black skirt. Simple, professional, hopeful. In the living room, her grandmother sat on the sofa watching her with kind eyes and a proud smile. You look lovely, she said. It's just work, Nora replied softly, smoothing her blouse. Yes, her grandmother said, but the kind of work that matches your heart. Knock came at the door. Nora opened it to find Miles standing there in a clean white shirt and gray pants holding a small bag. I brought breakfast, he said. Figured you might be too nervous to eat. Nora stepped aside to let him in. Thank you. Good morning, her grandmother called from the sofa. Good morning, Mrs. Blake, Miles replied with a warm smile. Just call me Vera, she said. Mrs. Blake makes me sound older than I already feel. They all laughed, and for a moment, the room felt like a memory of something sweet and familiar. On the drive to Ascendia, Nora stared out the window. The city moved around them, cars, people, morning energy. But inside the car it felt still. Safe. Are you ready? Miles asked. Nora nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. At the office, they didn't use the service elevator this time. They walked through the front lobby side by side. People glanced at them curiously, but Nora kept her head high. Miles led her to the outreach department on the 16th floor. The space was bright and filled with colorful posters, stacks of flyers and friendly faces. This is Lena, Miles said, introducing a woman in her 40s with glasses and a gentle voice. She runs the department. Welcome, Nora, Lena said, shaking her hand. Miles told me you've got a heart for people. That's what we need here. After a quick tour and a rundown of her first tasks, Nora was left at her new desk. She stared at the computer screen in front of her. Everything felt new and overwhelming. But underneath that, she felt something else. Purpose. By lunchtime, she had already read through 3 community reports and drafted ideas for a school visit. Her thoughts came quickly, fueled by years of untapped passion. This wasn't just a job. It was a way to make a difference. At noon, she received a text from Miles. "Meet me on the roof for lunch." She smiled and made her way to the rooftop garden. He was waiting with 2 sandwiches, bottles of lemonade, and the same quiet song playing from the night before. "How's the first day?" he asked as she sat down. "Better than I imagined," she said. "I feel useful." Miles looked at her for a long moment. "I knew you would be." They ate in silence for a while, listening to the city breathe around them. Then Nora spoke. "Why, didn't you just give me the job? You own the company. Because you deserve to earn it," he said. "I wanted you to be seen by others, not just by me." She nodded, grateful for the respect. Later that evening, back at her apartment, Nora helped her grandmother prepare dinner. They moved around the kitchen like a team, slicing, stirring, talking. "How was it?" Vera asked. "It was more than just work," Nora said. "I feel like I'm part of something important." As they sat down to eat, the doorbell rang again. This time, Miles held a bouquet of wildflowers and a small folder. "For you," he said, handing the flowers to Vera. "And something for you to look over," he added to Nora, offering the folder. Inside were plans for a new school program. At the top of the page, the title read, "The Nora Project." Nora looked up, confused. "What is this?" "A program for students who come from difficult backgrounds," Miles explained. "We help them see their potential. We mentor, support, and guide them." "Why my name?" she asked. "Because you inspired it," he said simply. Nora's throat tightened. She blinked fast to keep tears away. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Miles replied. "Just help us build him." A week later, the project was approved. Nora led the first team meeting, her voice clear and steady. She didn't feel like a janitor anymore. She felt like a leader. Months passed. The project grew. More schools joined. Students sent letters of thanks. One girl wrote, "I never believed I was smart until someone showed me I mattered." Nora carried that letter in her bag. One evening, Miles invited her back to the rooftop. The sky was clear and stars sparkled above the city. "Do you remember the night under the tree?" he asked. "Yes," she said softly. "I made you a promise," he said. "I said I'd come back for you." "You did," she replied. "Just not the way I expected." Miles took her hand. "Sometimes life takes the long way around." Nora smiled. "Sometimes the long way is the one worth taking." And beneath, the stars that once witnessed 2 young hearts full of dreams, they stood together, no longer waiting but building something beautiful from the pieces of the past, not just love, but legacy.